going on, guys? Kyle here with Gnarly Knives, and you might have noticed I'm not in the garage today. I am actually in my basement. It's getting quite chilly outside, so I thought I'd just do a video inside, see how it goes, see what you guys think. Today, though, we are going to be talking about a couple of sweet knives from France. These are the Opinels. These specifically are the number 8. I have a carbon version and the stainless steel version. The carbon version I got probably about 3 years ago. It's everything about it is normal. The only thing I changed with it is I did blue the blade. It normally just comes as just like a satin finish blade. I don't know, I was messing around with gun bluing once, and you did it on the blade, and it's worked great. It's held up against rust really well. I also do keep some fix and wax on it, a little bit of grease to kind of just help that also. But it's held up really good. It still looks really nice. And even with using it, the bluing hasn't really come off. A few little spots, but nothing really noticeable. So that's held up great. But these are really cool knives. This other one, the stainless, I picked up within the last month. This is the most recent knife I've picked up. I've actually been trying to cut back, not spending so much money on knives. But once in a while, I do cheat a bit, and I'll get something, cheap. So this I picked up, it was 18 bucks. It's about the same price you get the carbon for. So it's cool you get that, that option, depending on what you're looking for. Let's just show this side. So the stainless steel on this is 12C27. I didn't know that. I knew they had stainless knives that you could get in stainless steel. I didn't know that you could get them, that it was 12C27. Now, I don't know, that could be something that they've maybe recently been doing. I remember I also looked at carbon, the stainless, when I picked up this carbon one a few years ago. Back then it didn't specify. So maybe just now they do, or maybe they use something else and now it's 12C27. But the fact that it is 12C27, I think is pretty cool. 12C27, to anyone who isn't familiar with, is Sandvik steel. It's made in Sweden. And I mean, it's not a super high-end steel. It's not a powder metal steel or anything like that. But if you're familiar with Mora, that is the stainless steel they use in the majority of their stainless knives. Some of them now they're using the 14C28M, which is a slight upgrade on this. That's what like the Mora Garberg is in, their stainless version. But the 12C27 is a really good steel. That's why I was like excited. I still would have gotten it regardless. I've been wanting a stainless one, but when I saw the 12C27, I was like, absolutely. And I ended up going with the number 8 because I already had a number 8, so why not have 2? I mean, I do have a couple other Opinels. I have the number 12, which is massive, and then I believe is also number 12, but is their gardening knife, where it does kind of like a hook blade. That I actually do have a video on. The gardening knife video that I did maybe about 6 months ago. Excuse me. But these knives here, which I think is interesting, is, so they're, number 8, number 12, like I said, I believe they go down to number 3 or number 4. The 8, or the numbers on them, refer to the centimeters, so how long the blade is in centimeters. So the number 12 is 12 centimeters. This one is, being the number 8, are 8 centimeters. So for everyone else in the world, you know right away what that is. But for anyone here stateside, it's basically 3 1/4 inches. So that is also the full blade length is 3 1/4 inches. The overall length is almost 7 5/8 inches. So the handle being about 4 3/8 inches. So it's a good size knife. And what's funny about it is, with the size of it, because I mean, it fits my hand very well. I still have a little bit more poking out, so if you have larger hands, the knife is super light. Now, granted, that's also the handle, because the handle, there's no metal in it other than the collar here and the blade itself, obviously, and the pin that holds everything together. Is it's a wooden handle. It's totally wood. They do use different woods. Most of them will be like this, where it's beech wood. The carbon version is also beech wood, but I believe they used just a different stain. I'm not 100%. If you know, let me know. But from what I've been able to tell, it seems like they'll usually, with the stainless, will be a little bit of a lighter finish and then a little bit darker with the carbon versions, or they could have just changed. It has been a couple of years, but I feel like I remember that. What is interesting is it does have a lock, technically. Well, not technically, it does have a lock, but it's what's called a collar lock. I've heard some people call them a roll lock, a roller lock. I just call it a collar lock, but it's cool. It's very, you don't have to use it. It's not that's what I kind of like about it. It doesn't automatically engage. It's something I've noticed just with any locking knife can sometimes be a pain. If you just need to do something really quick, you don't need it to lock. So a lot of times I won't even open the blade all the way. If I'm going to cut like a package, I'll just open it part way and then slice it just so I don't have to unlock it. Which, I mean, I guess in the grand scheme takes, a fraction of a second, but then it just locks. So you see here, and then with it engaged, what's interesting about it and kind of cool, especially if you, like me, have young ones running around. I mean, I don't leave my knives around, but something like this I wouldn't be too bothered about necessarily, because once it is closed, you can lock it, and now the blade won't open. And it's a little thumb nick. The blade won't open now. You get a little play out of it, but it's not going to come up. I mean, you will get a little bit around the tip, but it's not a full open blade, and it doesn't go past the wood. You can see if you can tell there is a notch. It's kind of showing up a bit, but right where the tip of my finger is, you can kind of see the notch. So then when it locks in, it goes right up to the notch, and now it's locked. So very cool. And of course, it's the same with the carbon. I do think at some point I will get another carbon, just leave it plain, or just, let it gather a natural patina to it. But these knives are very, very cool. They've been around for a very long time. These, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was the 1890s that the Opinel did come out. If not, it was still the early 1900s. So definitely before 1920. But this company's been around for over 100 years or 100 years at the very least. And from what I understand, they have not changed how they make them at all. I think around the middle of the 20th century, like the 50s, 60s, I believe is when they started adding the locks. But the knives have remained the same materials. I mean, of course, upgrading some with the stainless steel. I'm not sure how long 12C27's been out, but I would wager it did not exist at the time Opinel opened up business, and it is Savoy, France, if anyone was wondering. It's cool too because they will even say on the blade. Especially with these, it's pretty easy for me to tell because not even the handles being different colors, but one is black and one is, just satin metal finish. But it will say on them that they are carbon, or this, I think it's pronounced kind of like carbone. It's not really focusing much. But it says on there, with the stainless ones, it doesn't say stainless, it says inox. So it shows up a little better here. But that's what they refer to their stainless as. And these knives, what's nice is they are pretty cheap. I mean, like I said, about 18 bucks. The price goes up and down if you're getting bigger or smaller. What is cool, you can buy sets. And, for what you would probably pay for getting up there on like a higher end knife, you can buy a set and get the 1 through 12. I think it's like 140, 150 bucks. So it's when you start getting into pricier knives, but now you're getting a dozen. And even the small ones go for about 10 bucks. So, even at 150, these being 18 bucks. So I think the number 12, when I bought it, was 25 bucks. So it's a cool, interesting way that they, you can just get a whole set. I've seen them in carbon. I think I've also seen stainless. I don't see why they wouldn't make it also in stainless. But what's cool about these, I think they're a great way for someone to easily customize their knife without having to do a ton of stuff just to make it more unique to them. I mean, a good example was the gun bluing. I mean, I bought it for that fact because I did blue another knives. I've gone through like random phases. I went through like a patina phase where I just soaked a bunch of knives in vinegar and stuff and put cool patinas on them. But I went through a little bluing phase. I blued a couple Moras and this. But that's something you can do. You can also do the vinegar. Unless you leave it in for probably a few days, it probably won't turn quite this black. But you can also gauge how dark you want it. But also, too, one thing I'm thinking of doing with one of these, probably the stainless one, is I'm thinking of just sanding it down, refinishing it. But I was also thinking about maybe carving into the handle a bit, just to add a little more grip. Because these, like I said, they are very comfortable. They fit well in the hand, but the handles are a little slick. And then especially up here where I put my index finger. So this, I mean, I'll leave as is. But it's pretty slick. And though it is a pretty neutral handle, it's rounded, there's no real humps. I mean, there's a little tiny bit of a swell in there. So it's something that pretty much anybody could be comfortable with. But the downside to that being that it is pretty slick, especially the finish as well, because it's just, it has almost a luster to it. It's a very smooth finish. So I'd probably sand it with maybe 120 grit, or after I carve in any designs or whatever, I would probably sand it with 120 grit so it has a little more of a grip to it. And one thing I was thinking of maybe doing is on one side where the nail nick is, maybe like carving down a little bit, like probably big enough for my index finger. So maybe like, I don't know, 1/2 inch across and maybe go down like 1/8 of an inch and just kind of open up a little more of a channel. So that way you can I could even use my thumb too, 'cause that's what I generally use. It's a thumb nick, a nail nick. But a lot of times I have to use my pinky finger because it's a little bit smaller. It's able to get in. But these knives are great for a lot of things. They're very thin. The blades on them are very thin compared to, just some other knives I have lying around. If you look at the thickness compared to, the Spyderco Endura. Another really cool traditional French knife, the Duke. You can see that's quite a bit thinner. And then I also have the Buck Spitfire right here. This is just what I have on hand. Quite a bit thicker than the Opinel. So what makes it good is, it is a flat grind. But it's very thin, especially when you get down towards the tip. It is very thin. So this knife slices things very well. As you guys know, if you've watched more than one review of mine, that one thing I use my knives a lot for is just, cooking food prep stuff. And these are phenomenal at it because they're so thin. Now, granted, the blade's only 3 1/4 inches long, so you're not going to be cutting massive things, fat potatoes or whatever, but it definitely gives you like a smaller apple or whatever, you're cutting up carrots, celery. They slice very well and very clean, and they do come pretty sharp out of the box. This one isn't quite shaving anymore, but the stainless one, when I got it, it was shaving out of the box pretty well. I mean, it wasn't beautiful mirror polish, but it was very sharp out of the box. And even still now, it's pulling some hairs out, like it's shaving off some hairs. So this is something that could definitely be put to work right away, as opposed to even, because I think when I did the Duke video, I mentioned when the Duke came in, this had basically no edge. Like I had to put an edge on it. There were a couple spots closer to the tip where it gets really thin. The tip itself is very sharp, but like towards up towards the tip. Always, yeah, it had a bevel, but pretty much here to here, in between my fingers, there was literally no bevel at all. And then there was a little bit towards the back, back towards where the plunge grind is, which, I mean, not a huge deal. I mean, this isn't a very expensive knife. These go for about 25 bucks, but that's even something there. You know, these go for under 20. These go for around 25, depending on the size. This one was around 25, 26. But these came with a good working shaving edge. And it was the same with my carbon version when I got that. May not be the same, but for buying two of the same knife a few years apart, and I had similar results with both. And the number 12 was very sharp. That was shaving. The garden knife, that one wasn't quite as sharp. That one had a decent edge on it. But I also wonder, maybe with that curve of the blade, you know, maybe it made it tougher to grind. But I feel like I can say with, you know, having 4 Opinels that I bought over 3 years, they definitely have their shit together when it comes to grinding their knives. So you think we're about to have a visitor? Hey, Scarlett.
Hi, let's go to the bathroom.
All right. And I'm just doing a video quick. Just that kid. But these knives here, I've had them for quite a few, or not quite a few. I've had them for a few years now, and I've been very happy with them. This one I've actually done carvings with. You know, I mean, it carves decently. I mean, it's not a Scandi ground knife. It's not a Mora or Martini or something. But because the blade is so thin, it does carve pretty well. And it has, you know, a decent belly. So, I mean, with certain cuts, because I'll do certain things, it's nice having the belly. It does very well. And then having a very thin tip. Scarlett, please go back upstairs.
Okay.
But also with having a very thin tip, it also is nice getting into places, especially because I like to carve pipes a lot. So I'll, you know, widen out the bowl part of the pipe, if you will. But having a thin tip is nice because I'll usually hold it like this and just kind of grind it out, because I just use a drill to drill in for where the bowl part of the pipe is. But then it's just a, you know, a straight cylindrical drill hole, you know, where I kind of like to widen it out a bit. And these do great for it. Even sometimes when I carve a pipe and I'm just using a regular, you know, actual carving knife, I'll still sometimes bust this out and use this to kind of get in a little bit further. And they do well. I really have been impressed with these knives, and just for the price of them, I mean, I feel like you cannot go wrong at all. They're fun little knives. They do great work. I definitely want to get more. Maybe at some point I'll treat myself and I'll just get the whole set. Or I would love to do maybe get 2 sets, so I keep one that's, you know, just as is, and the other one I can just do a bunch of stuff on. But really cool, really fun knives. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys will let me know if you guys have them, if they're a thing that you like using, or if you'd be interested in ever getting them, because I feel like even if you're into like the high-end expensive knives, it's nice having a little knife that you can kind of just use for whatever. You know, you don't have to worry about, especially with how cheap it is. I mean, you grab a couple of them, you know, keep one in your car. Just throwing things around, you know, keep one in your car. I just find them to be very useful. I think would be great too is if you put together like a first aid kit, get one of the smaller ones, you know, say maybe even like the number 6. But because it'll fit in a first aid kit, but I feel like having a thin tip definitely lends itself useful to a lot of things. I mean, even something as simple as, you know, I mean, I'm sure we've all done it, but, you know, you get a splinter and using a knife tip to get the splinter out. I mean, these do great here, but especially just being so thin, cutting bandages. I mean, I would say I'd get one of the stainless ones. You don't have to worry about it rusting, you know, if it's not something that you're using all the time. But especially where they're sharp out of the box, you know, I mean, you just take it and throw it right in, not have to think about it. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for coming along and checking this out. Hopefully you guys don't mind chilling in here. Might see how things go. Might, start doing some videos in here for a little bit, depending on how bad the weather is. But remember to keep carving, stay sharp, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.